Good morning. It is 6:52 a.m. on Saturday, November 7th, 2015. I'm Christiana Ellis, and I just got up. Just 5 more minutes. I have been outside with Luna already this morning. It was a fine walk with the sunrise just coming up. And I was originally thinking I was going to go back to bed, but then I was kind of just enough awake after that walk and seeing some sunlight. I got up, made some tea. But yeah, so feeling pretty good. This is today is 1 week from when I was first moving everything in. Feel like I'm settling in pretty well. I made some good progress unpacking last night. Plan to do more over the weekend. From 9 to 12 is when the cable guy is supposed to come and make my cable work again. Looking forward to that. I was starting, I've spoken about this before on the videos, but I can sometimes start to feel anxiety when I'm behind on TV shows. Like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I have to catch up on my shows. What a burden. Seriously, though, one of the shows that I am very excited to watch that I haven't seen. So the first episode came out on the 31st, and then tonight will be the second episode. But that is Ash versus the Evil Dead on Stars, and extra excited. I was excited already for it, but I was extra excited just given that seems like the word is in that the first episode at least was pretty good. So looking forward to that. And I think partly just because I was excited for that and I needed something to just kind of put on the TV while I was unpacking last night. I watched the original two movies, Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2. I'm going to probably watch Army of Darkness today as well, just to get that whole trilogy in preparation for being able to watch the first and then maybe the second later tonight episodes of Ash versus the Evil Dead. It's such an interesting series. It's weird thinking about it just in the context of like, okay, do I talk to you guys like you know all about these movies, or like you don't? I'm going to pitch it like you don't, okay? So those of you who say, Evil Dead, of course I've seen Evil Dead. You guys will just have to, ride this out. Or you can maybe judge me for how well I explain it. The very first movie stars Bruce Campbell and a bunch of other forgettable people. That's maybe not fair. I should look up who they are, but I don't recognize any of them. And then Sam Raimi is the director, although they were both very young. I believe they were both 19 when that first movie was made, and it was practically like a student picture. And it was made super cheap, and unlike what the series turned into, it is mostly just a horror movie. It's not really a horror comedy like the series became, and it's very low budget, and you can tell, and yet it is crazy ambitious for a low budget young person's as directing as their first feature horror movie. And it's got just a lot of really great inventive stuff in it. And again, given that it's not trying to ride that line between the horror and the comedy, it's got some really disturbing stuff in it. There were definitely parts where I was having to ride the volume button because some of the actual sort of monster encounters, they're called deadites, and or Kandarian demons, and or just monsters. Some of the noises they make are very unsettling, and I didn't really want those to be playing at full volume, especially because there's a couple of them where they go on for a really long time, which is, of course, part of what is supposed to be unsettling about the scene. but it is sort of the archetypal cabin in the woods movie, um, in the sense that, got a bunch of teens that go up to this cabin, they're hanging out, they do something slightly dubiously wrong, meaning, it's like in Cabin in the Woods, this idea that they have to transgress so they can be punished. Although it's interesting that in the context of the movie, they actually don't, so there's the ancient book of the dead that when read aloud summons the demons, but technically they don't actually even read it. They just play, hey, let's play this old reel-to-reel cassette recorder that we found, and it was the guy on the recording that had previously read it, and that's what killed him, and now it's read aloud again because they play the recording. So they do certainly continue playing the recording after it gets really creepy, but they don't read the book themselves either. Anyway, the demons come, and it's basically a scary thing where the demons can really just kind of possess almost anyone they want, apparently. It's not, their powers are not limited in any practical way, and in fact, even every time you manage to accomplish any sort of a seeming victory, like by, say, cutting the head off of your now demon-possessed best friend, that is usually only a slight delay and often seems more calculated to just build you up so that you can be crashed down again rather than any kind of a legitimate victory. And yet, at a certain point, the main character, Ash, once he is the only one left, kind of sort of a switch flips in him, and he kind of becomes a super badass. And I don't mean to imply that, I don't know, it's like it's still like the nature of the monsters doesn't change, but he becomes much better at dealing with it, even though the movie makes it very clear that he's kind of going nuts too, which is great. So anyway, that's first Evil Dead, and I feel like a lot more people have seen Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness, and fewer people have seen the first one, and that's probably fitting because I think the first one is interesting in the context of what 2 and Army of Darkness became, rather than necessarily great on its own. I mean, if you're a fan of low-budget horror movies and that sort of thing, it's obviously a good one to watch. But Evil Dead 2, it's interesting chronologically in terms of the story, because the first 15 minutes or so of Evil Dead 2 is actually like a simplified retelling of the first movie. It doesn't pick up from where the first movie left off exactly, but it's also not really a flashback because it's not using clips from the first movie, and there's characters missing, and like things don't happen exactly the same way. So it's weird that it's the way it feels is probably exactly what happened, which is that Sam Raimi was thinking, I kind of want to continue the story rather than just retell the whole same story. And so the problem, though, is because this is a much higher profile movie now that he's making, he needs to realize it's quite possible that people won't have seen the previous one. And so he kind of just comes up with like, okay, well, let's sort of take the big plot beats of the first one and then just sort of rapid fire get them out there so that we can hit the ground running with continuing the story where Ash is already a little bit more accomplished as a monster fighter, and we can start bringing in other elements. And Evil Dead 2, okay, this is running long, so I don't need to go belabor this as much, but Evil Dead 2 is amazing. I mean, if you're really squeamish about horror, then it's still probably not for you because it's got a lot of like monster effects and gross out stuff. But it's amazing because, first of all, it is kind of still scary as a horror movie, but there's just so much humor in it. And Bruce Campbell is just a delight. Um, as the bits where his own hand gets possessed and so he can't control it, and like there's a moment where it's like he's hoping that he can just like run some cold water over it and it'll be okay. But then as he's just going like this, it starts reaching and grabbing dishes and just smashing them against his head, um, and just the physical comedy of this scene where he's struggling against his own possessed hand is amazing. And just all the different stuff that goes on in this movie. Um, at one, so we get a new heroine, but at one point, one of the secondary characters is killed not by the demons, but by her, just because she's dumb twice. Um, or okay, she's scared and distracted, maybe rather than dumb. But she does end up stabbing him, thinking he was a monster coming in the door. And then, as he's laying there groaning after having been stabbed in the gut by a giant demon dagger, she drags him to safety, which happens to be right next to the trapdoor where there was a demon that was able to open the door just enough to just pull him in and deliver a fountain of blood. Um, so it's great. And then Army of Darkness takes it even to another level. It takes that same element, kind of even amps up the humor even a little bit more, and then just the scale of the whole thing just gets so much bigger. It is great. I would say if you have never seen these movies, if you're into horror movies, you should start with the first one, and then the whole trilogy is going to be a delight for you. If you're less into horror movies, but you are at least tolerant of the sorts of things that you might see in like a gross out horror movie, it's not gore like in a torture porn sort of thing. It's monster gore, though, like goop and sprays of blood and stuff like that. Rotting, decaying flesh, kind of zombie type stuff, but with additional elements. So if you are tolerant of that, then 2 is the place to start. But like if you can deal with that stuff, but you're not necessarily into just horror, then you can skip 1. You really like 1 is interesting, but two's the one where I really say watch that. And then if you really don't want any horror at all, even Army of Darkness is maybe not going to be your favorite thing, but just as a cultural literacy geeky sort of thing, can't beat it. It's so great. There's so many geeky little in-jokes that are from that you may not even realize. Anyway, that's Evil Dead 1 and 2. I'll talk to you tomorrow for 5 more minutes.